Hello, everyone. This is Serious Trivia, and welcome to round 3 of the Subscriber Game Tournament. Now, after our first 2 rounds, there are officially 8 remaining contestants, and from their round 2 results, they have been seeded into this bracket for the rest of the tournament. Now, most of the rules from round 1 will still apply, but in case you need a refresher, they are as follows. First, both players must be playing the game on the final patch 1.7.1 without any mods. 2, the match will be played on Romance and Realism modes with unlimited time. 3, no duplicate generals are allowed within your own team, but since the draft is blind, having the same general with the other team is allowed. 4, no deployables are allowed for either side. And 5, the army funds will be set to Ultra for both players, which is equal to 15,000 for the match. And aside from those rules there, the particular map that I have selected for round 3 is this map being shown here in Hanzhong, with the coordinates of 307 for X and 353 for Y. And this map is very unique because it has forest coverage on the northern half of the map and open field on the bottom half. And not only that, because we're in the mountainous region of Hanzhong, the northern half of the map is at a much higher elevation than the southern half. It's pretty much close to a 30 to 40 degree slope going from top to bottom in terms of elevation difference. So this makes this map very imbalanced, unlike the map we used in round 1. Not only that, this map will also take place in the harvest season during the day with the fog weather, and fog will reduce range accuracy, and also with the forest on the top, it will make range very difficult to use into the northern part of the map because you can hide units not only in fog now, but also in the forest. It could also allow for some very interesting fire attack, so there's a lot of flexibility here. Now, the reason why I picked such an imbalanced map in terms of elevation advantages, which limits range, also fatigues units fighting uphill, is because I wanted to provide a little bit of a reward for the players who ranked higher from round 2. So for this round, if you have the higher seed in your matchup, you get to choose which sides you want to spawn into. So my estimation is most of the higher seed will pick the northern side and spawn on the top of the map, fighting down. Of course, there are things like guerrilla deployment, there are things like fire weapons as well as siege weapons that you could use to potentially neutralize some of these advantages, and it could open up for some interesting tactic for the player at the very bottom. You could also use Foresight to kind of break away the forest advantage and turn that against the player that's starting out in the north with Fire Attack, pinpointing exactly where the enemy are hiding. So there are a lot of flexibilities here. Now, of course, I'm sharing all of these because the matches have already been played and they will be showcased in the following 4 days, 1 match a day at our standard time of 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll have the schedule in the community post, so if you want to check it out there a bit later, you'll also see that. I'll also put in the schedule at the end of this video as well, so no need to worry. And lastly, as we have covered most of the rules, I want to talk about the generals that we have banned for the tournament, because I've been asked quite a few times, not only about which generals are banned, but why I decided to ban them for the tournament. Well, in the game, there are tons of generals to use, and when you select a general, there is a price for different tiers. And this generally balances the general out in terms of how much generals cost, whether they're good or not, and for the most part, the game is fairly balanced. But we do have some issues. So for example, the first general that we decided to ban for the tournament is Sima Yi. And the reason why Sima Yi is banned is because once he hit tier 3, the Uniters of China, he picks up Whitewater, which allows the shutdown of all abilities across the map with infinite range. So the enemy team basically cannot use any of their active abilities as long as Sima Yi is not hidden and not under fire. Now that's not a pretty difficult condition. You could of course send a cavalry unit out, send a range cavalry now if you want to go hunt down Sima Yi, chase him down, and try to stop this ability from being active. But that could lead your unit into trap situations. It would also force one side of the map to always be on the aggression. They have to charge into the team with Sima Yi just to stop Sima Yi's ability, or else you're playing handicap in romance mode without any active abilities on your generals. So in that case, Sima Yi would either see a very high pick rate or present a very distinct advantage for the player who picks him. So I decided to not include him. Now, another way I could do it is say you cannot pick tier 3 Sima Yi. But then we run into other problems. If you limit the tier only to tier 2 and tier 1, you also lose out on a lot of unit availability. So at that point, would you really pick him? That would effectively be a ban on Sima Yi, in my opinion. So to make things easier, I decided for Sima Yi's case, we're just going to ban him outright. So that's one general we banned. And then another general we banned is Xu Chu. Xu Chu at level 1 picks up the ability called Stored Defender, giving nearby allied generals 70% damage resistance. This does not include himself, but this is still insane because this can be stacked with other damage resistant abilities. For example, if we are running, let's say any Wu character, so in this case, let's say we picked up Zhou Yu and we pick up a Tiger Guard. The guard passive is stackable with Xu Chu's ability, which means for the 3 generals that you have, 2 of them will be 95% damage resistant, and Xu Chu himself would have at least 25% damage resistance, and that is simply unacceptable. You don't even need to use Wu generals. If you have Nanman generals, you could also run Xu Chu with Lady Zhurong and Meng Huo, who has the power of love, giving each of them 25% damage resistance and immunity fatigue. Stack on the 70%, these two have 95% damage resistance, plus immunity to fatigue, plus flaming mace as their weapon. That is just unfair. You can't kill them. They're unbreakable. So because of that, Xu Chu is just straight up banned, because even his tier 1 has immense value. Not to mention, when he's tier 3, he has Condemning Howl, which is 1 use only, but it activates when he's below 20% health, and it gives him 10 times damage and unbreakable, which is pretty much what you want with Dian Wei, except for Dian Wei doesn't give himself unbreakable. Xu Chu gives himself unbreakable for the rest of the game and 10 times damage. So 27k per whack of his mace. That is just unfair. So Xu Chu is definitely banned forever in multiplayer. The guy is just broken. And then joining the ban list, we have another, this one's more of a bug because we have Gao Shun. Gao Shun has a very particular skill. He has Flame of the Phoenix at level 1. And at level 2, you get, Final Rush. Nothing special here. Once he hit tier 3, he picks up Scattering Blow, which gives him 100% melee splash attack range. So essentially, he's given slash damage. So if you swing your spear at the edge of your damage, it will extend that by 100%. So it kind of doubles your attack range, and everyone that you hit will get the same damage. Well, unfortunately, that also can be combined with Flame of the Phoenix. So think of the radius that you usually have for Flame of the Phoenix. Now make that entire radius splash damage. So you double the circle, and that's essentially 4 times the area, and you're smashing 3.8k on everything in a nuclear blast zone around Gao Shun. That's simply broken, and that's pretty unfair. Now, very similar to Sima Yi, I could potentially say you could recruit a tier 2 Gao Shun, but that is such a handicap that I just think people would not recruit him at all, especially since he has the wrong horse as well. So I feel like might as well just ban him outright. So that's why Gao Shun's banned. This is more of a design bug that was not fixed, because the interaction between splash damage and Flame of the Phoenix really shouldn't work like that, because Flame of the Phoenix counts as a melee attack, and this gives all your melee attack extra splash radius, and it just becomes crazy. So Gao Shun's also banned. Then we also had a few other bans that for different reasons. One of those bans is Liu Chong, who is right here. Now, Liu Chong is banned because he has Show of Force at level 1. And for a very low cost, you pick up a general that has unlimited range ability power. 3.8k piercing shot, minus 15 morale to everything it hits, only 60-second cooldown. So essentially you end up with a general that want to kite out, shoot this shot, run away, wait for cooldown, and your army can be built entirely defensively. He will become sort of your siege weapon in campaign and force the other player to come towards you. And that's not very fair. And since he has a tier 1, I can't make a restriction saying, you have to recruit him at a lower tier to get rid of that ability. That's just not possible. So the ability itself, because there's no limitations, like say Heartseeker, you can only use it 3 times, Hail of Arrows, you can only use that 4 times, you can at least try to outplay that. Here, with unlimited battle timer, one side is just going to end up building a turtle composition. Liu Chong is going to go out, shoot this, run away, and rinse and repeat. And that's just not a fun experience. So Liu Chong is also banned. And then we had 2 other generals that I banned for slightly different reasons, and they are Dong Zhuo. Dong Zhuo's problem is this. At tier 1, for only 500 cost, he starts out with his gold sword. And that's just a little bit too efficient. Especially considering he has access to some elite units at tier 1. So you can end up getting Xiliang Cavalry with a tier 1 Dong Zhuo that ends up being a pretty efficient retinue at a very cheap cost. Whereas every single general in the game always start out with a bronze, and you have to pay up for your gold weapon. That is not the case for Dong Zhuo. So that's why I banned him. But starting in round 3, as a way to open up slightly more generals into the game, Dong Zhuo will now be allowed, but only if you pick tier 3 Dong Zhuo. So you are forced to pay up for the gold weapon, and that makes him fair, and that makes him someone we can expect to see, because he does have some very interesting mechanic with his Blade Breaker, giving him 100% armor when he's below 50% health. He already has one of the highest armor in the game at 80%. I don't even know how that interaction will work at 180% armor. I just assume it doesn't work that well because armor piercing damage, ignore it no matter how high you have, but it'll still help him block quite a bit of damage. And his other abilities are also a little bit fun to see, with some unbreakable plus double damage with all nearby units. So perhaps we'll see some Dong Zhuo coming up in this round and future rounds. Basically, we'll open them up. We'll just require the players to pick him at tier 3. And that's the same for Zhao Yun. Zhao Yun was also banned in the earlier 2 rounds for the exact same reason. He starts out the game with the blue blade, and not only that, because he's considered a Gongsun Zan general, he has access to the White Horse Fellows, which in the game was programmed incorrectly in the campaign as the cheaper unit, and thus in the multiplayer, it was also incorrectly programmed to be the cheaper option between the Raiders, which is actually the worst unit. So you actually get access to White Horse Fellows at level 1 instead of level 3, whereas this is locked to you. So that makes no sense, but they fixed the campaign part. In the latest patch, the campaign version of the White Horse Fellow now costs more and has higher upkeep, whereas there was a period of time when it was cheaper for you to get White Horse Fellows compared to White Horse Raider because the tier inside the code had them lower. That's still the case for multiplayer. So Zhao Yun could have gotten away with just paying up 500 for him with a gold weapon, and then you get the best, range cavalry option in the game at the longest range, highest charge, and that's a pretty decent retinue. So now, similar to what I'm doing with Dong Zhuo, you can use Zhao Yun going forward, but he has to be tier 3. That way you at least paid up for your blue blade. Of course, Zhao Yun is an amazing duelist in the game. Very high natural evasion that gets increased even more with elemental vigor. The sword reduces enemy armor, which makes the high armor piercing damage actually viable. So it is something we can expect to see, because the damage will also increase here. Eventually you can get double armor piercing here to help yourself out. You also get Flame of the Phoenix. You also can increase your melee evasion with Adamant Resolve. There's so many ways to increase evasion with Zhao Yun to over 100, which basically makes him nearly unhittable. So a pretty interesting option added in since the start of round 3. There is, however, one more general that we banned, and that is Pang Tong. And Pang Tong is banned because he has ability at tier 3, I believe. I think it's, yeah, tier 3. And that is from the ashes. It doesn't matter where Pang Tong is on the field. He clicks this button, gives up 25% of his current health, and every other general on the field that's friendly will heal 8.2k health and become invincible for 10 seconds, where they take no damage. That is too broken, because you can use this multiple times. So you charge your enemies, you charge your generals into the enemy, you take a little bit of damage, you activate this, for the next 10 seconds they deal free damage and heal back, and then you can retreat them back after 120 seconds when this is ready again, send them out again. You can use this at least 4 times in a battle, and that's very broken, and also not very interactive. You can hide Pang Tong on the field. He doesn't even need to be out in the open. You could just end up not knowing where he is, and he will be a heal bot for the rest of the team. So because of that, he's also banned. Lowering his level requirement would also limit a lot of the troops. I feel like you just wouldn't pick him at that point, so it would be the same as a ban. So I might as well just ban him out. And that's pretty much all our bans. Everyone else, sure, some generals are strong, but I feel like there's always counterplay. There's always, ways to shut down abilities. So even if you have a super strong ability like Guan Yu, you could counteract God of War with, high evasion. You can counteract that with a strategist that can shut down abilities. And plus, he's expensive. Look at the price of all the generals we showcase. He's 2,500. Zhao Yun's only 1,500. And then you have generals like Lu Bu, who's 2,700. So there is a balance in terms of how much you're paying up for good generals with good abilities. And all those things, in the end, I think is pretty well balanced. There are just a few abilities in the game that's a little bit too strong, and those are the ones that we ended up banning for the tournament. So I hope that cleared up a lot of the questions around which generals we banned and why we banned them, and also the rule against no duplicate generals to prevent things like triple Xu Huang, which totally ruined the game, because now each of them are giving the two other 140% damage resistance. They can't take damage, and if you just have an army of these 3 guys, tier 3 with a smash ability, you just go around and kill people, because your smash ability is 9.4k circular smash with minus 100 melee evasion, only 60-second cooldown, and that army kills everything because they take no damage, and that's just not fun. So that's why no duplicate generals. And anyhow, hopefully that explained the rule for round 3. We're in for some very exciting matches with this skewed terrain between our 8 top players who kind of had to go through the gauntlet in round 2 to make it here. And I expect them to play out some very good matches, and we'll be ready for match 4, round 4 actually, semifinals, which I already have the map picked out. And that'll be a little surprise until next time. So until then, bye.